What event changed your way of thinking permanently? My stepdad actually sitting with me and explaining why he was hurt and disappointed when I messed up. Happened in my early teens, and the look on his face is still burned in my mind. To clarify, growing up I had a lot of dysfunctional relatives who'd punish me and the other kids in the family, but never explain why or what we did wrong. Just immediate punishment. No questions. Nothing. The first couple of times I screwed up, stepdad actually made an effort to figure out why and sort out the reason I wasn't listening or was acting out. Nobody else had really ever done that. It immediately felt different, and suddenly I realized, yes, I'm a huge butthole for saying and doing whatever it was or not doing something, since there was no reason for it. The fact he had empathy and understanding was huge for me. We have an awesome relationship, and he's done more for me in the last 25 years than most other blood relatives did my entire life. Mwah, mwah, I love it. I love it when people are just, receptive to, treating them well. It's a shame not everyone acts that way when people try to treat them with empathy and kindness. Knew a kid who came from college during winter break to his hometown in Wisconsin. Went out for a walk on the coldest day of the year. Nothing unusual about the neighborhood. Upper middle class, spread out, big yards. His phone died and he knocked on his neighbor's doors because he was so cold and probably started suffering from hypothermia. He could have been disorientated and lost his way. He was only a few houses away from his house, literally passed out and died a few houses down, and was found the next day. No alcohol or drugs. Really good kid. Nothing strange. So sad. When my mom, 51, was diagnosed with brain cancer, and almost exactly a year later she passed away. This was in July of this year. I remember while she was sick, I just could not believe it was happening. Brain cancer was something I only heard about or saw in movies. It got to a point that it just felt like we were waiting for the day she was no longer with us. Watching my mom deteriorate that way is a pain I wish on no one. I'm 27, and before this, I just thought people get old and they die in their sleep, and that's how it goes. But now I have little to no hope in life. It seems so short and meaningless now. I'm scared every day, thinking at any moment it could happen to me or someone else I love. I got nothing to say about this except that is just something that we as human beings have to learn to cope with. Does it suck? 100%, but that is life. This is really small and totally first world, but I went to college and the school only had one ice machine that we all could use. Dorm kitchens didn't have ice machines in the fridges. I love ice, and I realize how much I took it for granted. I make sure I don't waste ice, and I eat or drink it all. Doesn't matter if you're first world, second world, or fifth world, girl. If you frickin' learn how to appreciate things and whatever, good. You should appreciate things. When I was 11, I went on a boat for my friend's birthday to go tubing with her. It was our turn after the other kids got done. We had fun, but we fell off the raft and we're laughing like crazy. Once the boat turned around to get us, I started climbing up the ladder when I heard a blood-curdling scream that still traumatizes me today. She had somehow slipped under the boat and cut her inner thigh so deep that it wasn't even bleeding. Her dad and I were the only ones helping her up the boat, even though 3 other kids were on. Once she got on, I had to tie a towel around her legs super tight while her dad called the ambulance and drove the boat to their dock. Once we were there, the ambulance had already arrived and I got off the boat feeling nauseous and all hearing just shut off. I threw up in her yard and went into her house while I heard her screaming in pain getting into the ambulance. I went to put my clothes back on in her restroom, and I remember staying in there for 15 minutes or more on the ground in shock, causing me to not be able to hear anything, and my vision was going black. I thought of the fact that if she was to go up the ladder first instead of me, I would have been the one in pain. That's when my way of thinking changed. I realized that I didn't have control over anything. Like, if you go outside in the dark and say nothing is going to happen to me, that is a false sense of security. Anything can happen at any moment and you would have no control over the situation. That false sense of security in me just shattered. I feared that fact and didn't want to go anywhere. I was only 11. I still lived 2 minutes away from the house it happened at. I learned to live with the fact I learned that night, but regardless, it still scares me senseless. No doubt, that is true. Anything can happen to you at any time, and you might feel anxious a lot or, paranoid, but you just have to be aware, keep your eyes peeled, and learn to manage your emotions as best you can. My nearly 3-year relationship ended because I am or was a liar. After telling my now ex-girlfriend a story about how I saw someone get shot, like the 5th time I had told her, something clicked in my head and I realized that while these stories were lies and I used them to entertain people to help emphasize points I was trying to make and that I was unintentionally manipulating her. I even teared up once telling her because I had told it so many times I was basically emotionally invested in the story. Once it clicked and I understood these were lies and they were destroying our relationship, I told her everything and broke down crying. We were on the phone. The realization only took a second, but it's like I had finally put on glasses for the first time and saw everything in a new light. She said she wanted to not talk for a week and that I should see a therapist, which I scheduled at the earliest appointment. She broke up with me via Zoom last December on the 8th, long distance for a few months with plans on me moving. As a kid, never having a strong male figure in my life, I turned to where most boys look to, which were my coaches, mostly all of them former military with various levels of PTSD, and I think part of my lying had to do with my ideas on what masculinity was, and that I was using these stories to try to emulate who they were and how manly they are, because at the time I wanted to be like them. It's still no excuse, though. I love this woman with every ounce of my soul, and over a year later I'm still beating myself up for hurting her, which is something I never planned on doing. I have continued therapy, which has helped immensely. Even aside from things related to this point, I am trying to move on, but I just can't seem to get her out of my head. Sometimes I even still buy things for her like she's still here. I have to remind myself that she chose to leave and not work things out, and I understand in part why she left, but I think what hurt the most is that I had planned on reaching the highest of highs and lowest of lows with her, and all I wanted was to grow together as a couple and work things out, and she didn't. Some lessons you can learn over time or in a single moment, and some lessons require you to be kicked in the teeth. Consider me toothless. Probably having a biology lab in high school as a hangout spot. The biology teacher had a soft spot for me since I was generally interested in science, so not only was it my hangout, I got to fiddle with the microscope, wash glassware, organize old science teaching material, and so on. The biology teacher was an older woman who was actually a hippie when she was younger and is a hardcore Democrat in a very Republican area. New perspective and the way she taught gave me glances at opinions I would never have considered in my upbringing. All of this led me to understand this. Nature is beautiful and complex in the most bizarre ways that we can hardly fathom. Nature has mastered these intricate designs, which humanity can hardly recreate them after generations of work, and that's frickin' incredible. When I decided not to live like my family, meaning I didn't start doing illegal substances, smoke, live in trashy houses, or drive crap cars, I kept a job, worked hard to advance in my career, make more money than everyone else in my family. I bought my own house and a new car every 4 to 5 years. I saved money and have nice things. The more I changed, the less contact they kept, unless they needed money. After I found out that money I was giving them for food was going towards smokes and booze, I started offering to buy them the food if they gave me a list. They all stopped talking when I stopped giving money. My niece ended up living with me for a while because she couldn't handle living in crappy conditions. She was being bullied and ended up getting raped. Her mom wouldn't move to put her in a different school because I don't see the need to move and disrupt the family for one person's issues. I picked her up that day so she could get better and be safe. She ended up spilling the beans. They purposely did not include me because I wasn't their type of people, and I chose to be too good for them. I have friends and my wife's family that has taken me in. They've included me in everything, tell me they love me every day, so I've learned that blood doesn't make you family. You'll know who your family is. It is really insane to me that some people don't want anything to do with you if you try and enrich yourself or make yourself better. Like, if you're fine with living a substandard and quite frankly immoral lifestyle, then go ahead, you do that, but don't drag your family and friends down with you, and then when they try to be better, try to be like, oh, I hate you or don't care for you anymore. Maybe instead you should look at the people trying to make themselves better and think to yourself, maybe I should try that. I never understood anorexia because food is amazing. I'm an overweight guy, quite blokey, always have been. Then, when I was 17, I broke my jaw. I couldn't eat solid food for 4 weeks. I got sick of those meal replacement milkshakes after a few days. Stopped drinking things like orange juice a day after that. Nothing but water from then. For 3 or 4 days, I got hungry, but I just ignored it. After 4 days, I stopped getting hungry. I felt lighter, I had more energy, I slept better, my concentration seemed better, and I had a lot more time. It was great. After about 4 weeks, I'd lost 2 stone, and it was time to start eating again. And I couldn't. And it was disgusting. Eating is when you add this warm, lumpy mush in your mouth, and you mush it about from some more as it cools down and liquid comes out, which you swallow without noticing until you have to think about it all the time. Your senses are assaulted by these crazy waves of taste and smell. Spicy, sweet, bitter, salt, plus textures and temperatures. It's freaking weird. It took me 3 months to get back to eating as normal, and I lost another stone. I was never diagnosed with anorexia or any other eating disorder, but I have so much more patience for anyone who is. You don't realize, but eating is just a habit. If you stop for even a little while, it's hard to start again. See, when you put all those words together and describe the act of eating, yes, it does sound disgusting, but shut the hell up, I love eating. Just recently, my uncle got told he has cancer that's spreading fast, and he said no to treatment, so he's being put on palliative care. My dad told me that he's simply a guy who doesn't complain, and it made me put things in perspective. When my uncle was 17, he was shot, in a coma for 3 to 6 months, was given his last rites 3 times and woke up to being told he'd had no use of his legs anymore. He went on to marry and his wife passed away after they had kids. In fact, I never met his wife, and even still, he wasn't someone to complain. Whether he was bottling things up or genuinely didn't see the point in complaining, I don't know. That really put things in perspective for me. This is after I lost my mum to cancer at 16. She fought it twice over the course of 3 years and didn't complain either. Being faced with your own mortality like that is something I can only imagine being terrifying, and yet she didn't say anything about it. Some people are just built differently, physically, emotionally, mentally. Went on my first date ever at age 24, after years of denying my sexuality altogether and assuming I was going to be alone for the rest of my life. I decided to give Tinder a try. I honestly thought I was going to scare him away at first glance. I was very insecure about my appearance. He was such a sweetheart. He asked me about my life, my family, my goals, my aspirations, my achievements, etc. He showered me with compliments on my smile, my smarts, etc. I realized then that I had never really appreciated those things about myself. I never expected a complete stranger to appreciate me more than I did myself. I realized in that moment that I deserved love just as much as everyone else, and from that moment forward, I began to love myself more and grew more confident. It also taught me to be more appreciative of others and look past things like appearance. That is a magnificent lesson to learn, and let it be known, people, that most others, unless they're, kind of mean and judgmental, I guess, which, yeah, sure, there are. I guess I'm not helping my point here, but other people are probably not nearly as critical of your physical appearance or the flaws that you see in yourself. About a year and a half ago, I accidentally sat on and crushed my kitten. I was trying to sit down to help my other kitten, and as I'm a big guy, I wanted to actually sit down on the floor. It felt like a shoe underneath me, so I sort of pushed it to get out of the way. Turns out that was one of my kittens. At the time, they were probably both 6 weeks old. He screamed and ran behind the couch. I grabbed him, still screaming, and took him to my bedroom to tell my girlfriend, who just got out of the shower. The little guy coughing up blood and my heart just sank. I was certain I killed him. My girlfriend rushed him to an emergency vet. I was working from home at the time, so I couldn't go. The emergency vet gave him pain meds and made him comfortable. I was a mess for 2 days until he came home. Every time I saw his brother waiting for him to return around the corner, I felt like pure crap. After 2 days, he came home and made a full recovery. I shattered 2 of his ribs and punctured his lung. I still haven't fully accepted what happened and blame myself to this day. Okay, now all I want to know is, what did this change your perspective on? Do you need to lose weight? Do you need to look before you sit? Because either one of those are perfectly good. Otherwise, I am immensely happy that the kitten recovered. This may seem like such a small thing, but when I was in junior year in high school, there was this popular guy in our choir class that was also one of our best football players. At the time, I was having pretty bad home life issues and was convinced most of the pretty girls just acted nice to my face and made fun of me elsewhere. Didn't have a very large circle of friends or or anything, ignored by most of the student body, but one day for our spring final in choir, we had to get up in front of everyone and sing something of our choice. Well, this kid could play guitar pretty good. Went up there and started singing and strumming along to Hey There Delilah. He was really good, a little goofy, you know how teens are sometimes, but then he changes the lyrics for part of the chorus and goes, Hey there, blank, I love you, oh yes I do, and it caught me off guard so bad and everyone immediately starts cheering. The way he sung it, making sure to look me in the eye with this stupid little grin and a wink just made something in me break. He was so genuine in that moment. It wasn't staged, nobody put him up to it. He just wanted to make sure I knew someone really, truly cared about me. We never really talked before that, or really much after, but that one moment made me feel so special and so seen at a time when I desperately needed it. A few years after I graduated, I heard that he passed away from an undiagnosed heart condition. I think I still can't listen to that song without missing him. From that day forward, I really did start to trust people more. Our 10-year reunion is coming up, and I really hope his family comes. Many people in the world don't put any thought or consideration to how lonely some people can be a lot of the time, so you know what, this guy sounds like he was very much a class act. Rest in peace. Worked my butt off for a high-end developer in Los Angeles as an architect designer. Then my boss hired his friend's daughter. She got her own office. We found out how much she got paid. It was on the server. She got a Tesla and B's title. And when I realized I will not work overtime for anyone, or put in more effort than doing my job. It has worked out so far. I have a decent salary and never work overtime. Nothing big so far, but I've always been bad with mun-muns and spending. Can't say for the life of me, but my partner recently changed how I look at purchases for the better, simply by making me look at it like I worked X amount of hours for this, or this took me X hours to afford, and now some stuff just isn't worth impulse buying. Still not great with muns, but getting better. Oh man, the way this person writes reminds me of the oh whoa. My dad cheated on my mom most of their married life. At 13, I had to kick him out of the house because of it. I vowed then that I could never cheat on a partner of mine. See the hurt in my mom's eyes every time she found out. I could never do that to anyone I loved or even had feelings for. My father telling me that he loves me. I always thought he was ashamed of me. Turns out he was just worried about my choices and did not know how to communicate his emotions. My therapist led us through this conversation and it changed our relationship a lot. A person at work, pretty high position, father of 3 in his 40s, was killed on a train stop going to work in the morning. A guy with mental issues knifed him. Now, when I see someone acting strange or when I understand they are mentally ill, I move away, change a car in the train, or stay out generally. To be honest, I feel like there are more and more mentally ill people every frickin' day. Did anyone hear about Steve Buscemi getting punched in the street for no reason? Why would you punch Steve Buscemi? It's Steve frickin' Buscemi. He was a firefighter. He was a first responder in 9/11. I was an employee of a rent-to-own company and making an incredible amount of money for being good at collections. The event that got me was one Christmas Eve. A friend that worked with me was driving me home and we saw a customer that was about 3 months behind in their payment and would not talk to us on the phone and would hide in the house if ever we went to try to contact them. My friend said, let's follow them home because they will not recognize my truck. We get to the house right after they have gone inside, so we park and walk up to her door. We knock and they answer. After I remove all the groceries from their fridge and the food from the oven, we load them to the truck and went back to our store. Woke up the next morning and could not look myself in the mirror. I know it was my job and they were delinquent, but it just felt empty. I quit a week later. This is a complicated one in my opinion. They decided to actively avoid paying the dues that were owed for the service that was rendered, and then the consequences just caught up with them. I literally know a family currently who were booted out of a house in my neighborhood by the landlord so he could move his son in, and now that family live in an Airbnb because they have absolutely nowhere to go. They have 3 or 4 kids to look after and have been going place to place, and the Airbnb is now their latest spot. And yeah, it's awful. They pretty much did nothing to deserve that, while this situation is more yeah, you were supposed to do this, but you didn't, and you actively avoided doing it, so, the consequences have simply caught up to you. But the fact that it didn't sit well with the author is completely respectable. You need to have a certain kind of grit to do that sort of job. And it really doesn't help that it was on Christmas either. Like, you're literally doing the antithesis of what Christmas is about. My first wife's brother revealing his sister had been making me an unknowing cuckold even before we got married. Ew, that's rough, brother. That's rough. I've always had an appetite for risk, and that eventually led me to surround myself with people who love to live life on the edge. Led to a lot of crazy stories. During undergrad, me and a couple of friends climbed a rooftop of a 3-story building in our university. The rooftop was made out of glass. My friend stepped on the glass too hard and fell down 3 stories. He had brain damage and never looked or acted the same again. Lost some IQ points too. The kid was not only good looking but smart too. Everyone loved surrounding themselves with him. Once this incident took place, most of our friends distanced themselves from him. This incident taught me the cost of risk and how fake people can be. Lesson learned. People love throwing the lifeboat, but no one is willing to jump in the water to save you. And that, people, is why it is important to form genuine and sincere connections through truth, honesty, confrontation, even when necessary, to be like, you know what, I don't agree with you, but at the end of the day, they're your friend and you love them, and that is all that matters. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.